And when I was there, I seen a person with a total shoulder, that traditional way, and then somebody with a reverse total shoulder. And upon researching it and looking it up, I wanted to show it to you guys and give you some information. So in 1894, Jean Peen performs the first recorded total shoulder, and that's the idea of what he put in somebody. And he had help of a dentist to make that prosthetic. And ended up coming out in a month because of infection. But in 1950, Charles Neer perfected the prosthetics design, and over 70 different shoulder systems are on the market now based on Neer's ideas. For a traditional total shoulder, there's a section of the humeral head, and they replace it with another ball. And then the glenoid is reshaped, and then they fit it with a new socket. Indications are intact rotator cuff muscles, arthritic changes, and osteonecrosis. Contraindications are severe humeral head fractures, inadequate glenoid and humeral bone stock, and severe tear of the rotator cuff muscles. And that's the idea of it. So post-op, the benefits are they remove arthritic damage, it repairs and relocates the rotator cuff tendons that could be causing pain and dysfunction. Complications are component loosening, multidirectional instability, and rotator cuff tears. Complications rate when used as the first surgical intervention are 10 to 16%, and the revision rate is 6 to 7%. And the interesting thing about this is this tries to replicate the natural dynamics of the shoulder, and it tries to repair the rotator cuff tears if there are there. And on the reverse, this is where it gets interesting. So they resect the humeral head and replace it with a socket, and then they resect the glenoid capsule or cavity. Not that word. Anyways, lost my word. But anyways, they put a ball there, and they just reverse the shoulder. And then the interesting thing here is that the rotator cuff muscles, they pretty much, if they're torn and irreparable, they replace them. Like, they will cut them out, and if they're not torn, they'll leave them, but they're not going to be functional. They're changing the whole dynamic of the shoulder. And they have tendon transfers, so the teres major and the pec major are now the prime movers of the shoulder, along with the deltoid. Indications are the completely torn and irreparable rotator cuff, severe humeral head fracture, and previously failed total shoulder techniques, the traditional way. And then the elderly, they use this a lot in the elderly. Contraindications are intact rotator cuff and impairment of the deltoid muscle. So that's the idea. Post-op, the benefits are they alter the axis of rotation and allows lower shear forces across the joint, and then allows shoulder function without the rotator cuff tendons. Complications, acromial stress fractures, heterotropic ossifications, component loosening, multidirectional instability, reduction in range of motion that probably will not return to normal, and infection. The complication, the first replacement as surgical intervention is 15%, which isn't bad, and then used as a revision of a prior intervention is as high as 40%, and then the revision rates are really just crazy, and it's 4 to 54%. I think a lot of that has to do with the demographic it's used on, because you're not going to see that in a young person. You're going to see it in an old person, and they're not going to be able to keep their balance. They might fall on it. I think there's a lot more that goes into what causes the revision rates and the complication rates, other than the surgery itself being a bad technique. And that's my references.